In just 37 seconds, what started as a tense exchange between Piers Morgan and Meghan Markle erupted into absolute chaos. Voices raised, fingers pointed, and before anyone knew what was happening, the Duchess was being escorted off the set in front of millions of shocked viewers. This wasn't just another celebrity spat. This was a complete meltdown on live television, and you're about to hear exactly how it all fell apart. Last night's show was supposed to be Meghan's chance to set the record straight. Instead, it turned into one of the most explosive confrontations in television history. From the moment she sat down across from Piers, you could feel the tension crackling through the studio. The crew knew something was brewing. The audience sensed it. And Piers, well, he was ready for battle. The lights dimmed as Meghan walked onto the stage, wearing a perfectly tailored cream blazer and that practiced smile she's become famous for. The audience applauded politely, but there was an awkwardness in the air. Piers stood from behind his desk, extending his hand with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Meghan, welcome to the show," Piers said, his voice dripping with that particular brand of politeness that somehow feels like an insult. "Thank you for having me, Piers," Meghan replied, settling into the guest chair and crossing her legs with deliberate grace. The first few minutes seemed almost normal. Piers asked about her latest projects, her children, the usual softball questions that guests expect at the start of these things. Meghan answered with practiced ease, speaking about her charity work and her life in California. But anyone watching closely could see it in Piers' eyes. He was waiting, circling, looking for the perfect moment to pounce. "So, Meghan," Piers said, leaning forward slightly, "let's talk about what everyone really wants to know. The royal family. Your famous interview a few years back. You made some pretty serious accusations, didn't you?" Meghan's smile tightened just a fraction. "I shared my truth, Piers. I shared what I experienced." "Your truth," Piers repeated, and there was something mocking in the way he said it. Interesting phrase that. Because truth is supposed to be truth, isn't it? Not your truth or my truth. Just the actual truth. "I spoke about my experiences," Meghan said firmly. "Things that happened to me. Things I felt. No one can tell me those weren't real." Piers sat back in his chair, a slight smirk playing at the corners of his mouth. "Right. But see, that's where it gets tricky. Because you claimed things, serious things, about people who couldn't defend themselves. And now, years later, we've heard from palace staff, from people who were actually there, and their version of events is rather different from yours." The audience murmured. This was it. This was the moment everyone knew was coming. Meghan's jaw tightened. "Those palace staff members have been briefed on what to say. The institution protects itself, Piers. That's what it does. It protected everyone, except me." "Oh, come on," Piers said, his voice rising slightly. The institution. The institution. You talk about it like it's some evil conspiracy. These are people, Meghan. Real people with real feelings that you've dragged through the mud on international television." "I never named anyone specifically," Meghan shot back. "You didn't have to," Piers said, his voice getting louder. "Everyone knew exactly who you were talking about. You made accusations of racism, of cruelty, of neglect, and you did it to the whole world without giving anyone a chance to respond properly." Meghan leaned forward now, her composure starting to crack. "They had every chance to respond. They chose not to. They chose to brief against me anonymously instead. They chose to let me suffer." "Let you suffer?" Piers said incredulously. "You married a prince. You had a royal wedding watched by billions. You lived in a palace. Where exactly was all this suffering?" "Money and palaces don't protect you from racism, Piers. They don't protect you from feeling isolated and alone. They don't stop people from making you feel like you don't belong." Piers threw his hands up. "But were you actually experiencing racism? Or were you just not getting your way all the time? Because there's a difference, Meghan. A big bloody difference." The audience gasped. Some people shifted uncomfortably in their seats. This was escalating fast. "How dare you," Meghan said, her voice shaking with anger. "How dare you minimize what I went through? You have no idea what it's like to be the only person who looks like you in those rooms. To have people question whether your child will be too dark. To read lies about yourself every single day, and watch as the people who are supposed to protect you do nothing." Piers wasn't backing down. I dare because I'm tired of this victim narrative you've been peddling for years now. You chose to marry into that family. You chose to become a royal. And then when it got difficult, when you realized you couldn't just do whatever you wanted, you threw a tantrum and ran off to California. That is not what happened, Meghan said through gritted teeth. Isn't it though? Piers challenged. Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you wanted all the perks of being royal, the titles, the money, the fame, but none of the responsibility, none of the duty, none of the service. Meghan stood up abruptly, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. You don't know anything about duty or service. You sit here every night attacking people from behind your desk. That's not service. That's cruelty. Sit down, Meghan, Piers said, but his voice had an edge to it now. No, she said firmly. I'm done being spoken to like this. I'm done being dismissed and mocked. Piers stood as well, facing her across the desk. You want to play the victim so badly, don't you? Poor Meghan. Poor, misunderstood Meghan. But the truth is, you've made millions off complaining about how hard your privileged life has been. At least I'm honest about my experiences. Meghan fired back. Unlike you, who pretends to care about truth and accountability while you bully anyone who disagrees with you. Bully? Piers laughed harshly. That's rich, coming from someone who allegedly made her staff cry. Multiple staff members, I might add. Where's your accountability for that? Those allegations were investigated, Meghan said, her voice rising. And I was cleared. Cleared by an investigation we never got to see the results of, Piers countered. How convenient. The studio audience was dead silent now, watching this confrontation unfold like a car crash in slow motion. Production crew members stood frozen, unsure whether to intervene or let it play out. Meghan pointed a finger at Piers. You have had it out for me since day one. Since before I even married Harry. You've written countless articles attacking me, questioning my motives, making cruel jokes about me. And why? Because I didn't respond to your messages years ago? Because I chose Harry over having drinks with you? Piers' face reddened. Oh, don't flatter yourself. This has nothing to do with any supposed personal relationship. This is about holding you accountable for the damage you've done. Damage? Meghan's voice cracked. What damage? Telling my story? Sharing what happened to me? You damaged the reputation of the royal family, Piers said forcefully. You damaged relationships between Harry and his brother, Harry and his father. You've caused nothing but chaos and division, and you did it all for money and attention. That is such bullshit, Meghan shouted, and the audience gasped at the profanity. Those relationships were damaged long before I came along. I didn't create those problems. I just refused to stay silent about them. Oh, here we go again, Piers said mockingly. You refused to stay silent. You're so brave, such a warrior for truth. Except you only tell the parts of the story that make you look good, don't you? And you only tell the parts that make me look bad. Meghan shot back. They were both fully engaged now, voices raised, neither backing down. It was uncomfortable to watch, but impossible to look away. Piers jabbed his finger toward her. I tell the truth. I call out hypocrisy when I see it. And you, Meghan, are one of the biggest hypocrites I've ever encountered. You lecture about privacy while you do tell-all interviews. You talk about compassion while you've cut off your own father. You preach about mental health while you've allegedly driven staff members to tears. You don't know anything about my relationship with my father, Meghan said, her voice dangerously quiet now. You don't know what he did, what he sold, how he betrayed me. I know he's an old man, who you've completely shut out of your life, Piers replied, including keeping him from his grandchildren. But sure, you're the victim in that story too, right? Meghan's hands were shaking. You have crossed so many lines tonight, Piers. So many lines. Lines? Piers scoffed. You crossed lines when you went on international television and accused the royal family of racism without any proof. You crossed lines when you made millions off trashing the family that welcomed you in. Welcomed me in? Meghan let out a bitter laugh. Is that what you call it? They hung me out to dry. They let the press destroy me. They changed protocols just to make sure I couldn't get help when I was struggling. Oh, please, Piers said dismissively. The palace offered you help. Multiple times. You just didn't like the kind of help they were offering because it wasn't on your terms. You weren't there, Meghan shouted. You don't know what was said in private. You don't know what I asked for or what I was denied. And neither does anyone else because you've never provided any actual evidence, Piers shouted back. It's all just your word against theirs. And forgive me if I trust the institution that's been around for 1,000 years over someone who couldn't hack it for 18 months. That was it. That was the final straw. Meghan grabbed her microphone and yanked it off, the sound creating a sharp screech through the speakers. I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. Of course you're not, Piers said with a cruel smile. Because when someone actually challenges you, actually asks you hard questions, you run away. Just like you ran away from the royal family. Just like you run away from everything that gets difficult. Meghan turned to one of the producers standing off camera. Get me out of here. Now. We're in the middle of a show, Meghan, Piers called after her. You can't just walk off. She spun back around to face him, her eyes blazing. Watch me. I came here thinking maybe, just maybe, we could have an actual conversation. But you don't want conversation. You want to tear me down. You want to humiliate me. Well, congratulations, Piers. You've shown everyone exactly who you are. And you've shown everyone exactly who you are, Piers countered. Someone who can't handle criticism. Someone who plays the victim card every single time things don't go your way. I'm not playing anything, Meghan said, her voice shaking with emotion. I'm a real person with real feelings who has been through real trauma. But you'll never see that because you've decided I'm the villain in your story. You made yourself the villain, Piers said coldly. Meghan stared at him for a long moment, and for just a second, it looked like she might cry. But then her face hardened, and she straightened her shoulders. You know what? I feel sorry for you, Piers. I really do. You're so consumed with hatred for me that you can't see straight. You can't be objective. You can't be fair. You've built your entire career lately on attacking me, and what does that say about you? It says I'm not afraid to speak the truth, Piers replied. It says you're a bully, Meghan said simply. A pathetic bully who tears down women to make himself feel important. The audience murmured again, some people nodding in agreement, others looking scandalized. Piers' face was red now, his voice tight with anger. Get off my stage. If you can't handle a real interview, if you can't answer tough questions, then get off my stage. Gladly, Meghan said, turning toward the exit. And don't come back, Piers called after her. We don't need people like you on this show anyway. People who lie and manipulate and play the victim. Meghan stopped walking but didn't turn around. Her shoulders were rigid, her fists clenched at her sides. For a moment, the entire studio held its breath, wondering if she would turn back around and continue the fight. But she didn't. She took a deep breath, held her head high, and walked straight off the stage, her heels clicking loudly in the sudden silence. A producer rushed after her, trying to calm the situation, but Meghan brushed past everyone in her path, heading straight for the exit. Piers stood at his desk, breathing heavily, watching her go. The audience didn't know whether to applaud or sit in shocked silence, so they did both, creating a confused mixture of noise. Well, Piers said, turning back to the camera, trying to regain his composure. I think that tells you everything you need to know, doesn't it? Can't handle a few hard questions. Can't defend her own actions. Just walks away. But his voice didn't have its usual confidence. He looked shaken, angry, and maybe just a little bit like he knew he'd gone too far. Backstage, Meghan was surrounded by people trying to talk to her, trying to get her to calm down, maybe even trying to convince her to go back out. But she wasn't having any of it. She grabbed her bag, pulled out her phone, and headed straight for the exit, ignoring everyone who tried to stop her. I'm done, she said to anyone who would listen. I'm done with this. I'm done with him. I'm done. Back in the studio, Piers was trying to continue the show, but the energy had completely changed. The audience looked uncomfortable, the crew looked stressed, and Piers himself seemed to be operating on autopilot. We'll be right back after this break, he said to the camera. And as soon as they cut to commercial, he slumped back in his chair, running his hands through his hair. Someone on the crew asked if he was all right, but he just waved them off, staring at the spot where Meghan had been sitting just minutes before. The confrontation was over, but the fallout was just beginning. Social media was already exploding with clips of the argument, people taking sides, people condemning both of them, people analyzing every word that was said. But that was for later. Right now, in this moment, the damage was done. The interview had imploded. The guest had walked off, and the whole world had watched it happen live. Meghan pushed through the backstage doors and out into the night air, her security team scrambling to keep up with her. She didn't look back. She didn't pause. She just kept walking, leaving the chaos of the studio behind her. Inside, Piers collected himself as the commercial break ended. He faced the camera again, his expression hard and unapologetic. As you just saw, Meghan Markle decided she couldn't handle being asked legitimate questions about her behavior and her choices. She walked off this show rather than defend herself. And I think that tells you everything you need to know about her character. The audience gave a weak applause, but the damage was done. This wasn't a victory for anyone. This was just ugly. Two people tearing each other apart on live television, both convinced they were right, neither willing to back down. The show continued for another few segments, but everyone knew nothing else that night would matter. The story was already written. Meghan Markle had been kicked off Piers Morgan's show after a heated argument. The clips would play for days, maybe weeks. The think pieces would be written. The debates would rage on social media. But in the moment it happened, in those 37 seconds when the conversation turned from tense to explosive, when voices were raised and tempers flared and civility broke down completely, it was just two people who deeply disliked each other, finally letting all that animosity spill out in the most public way possible. And neither of them would ever forget it.